All right, guys. So I'm just now getting started. I decided to have my own little open hangout because the people on the other side of the community, they don't really want an open dialogue. They don't really want to have a discussion. So they'll talk about things like atheism, but won't let atheists in the room. They'll talk about things like evolution, but won't let any evolutionists come into the room. Um, they'll talk about things like objective morality and abortion and stuff like that, but won't let anybody else in the room. And the minute somebody proves these people wrong, they kick them, they give them the boot. So you guys are welcome to come into my hangout. Link is on my Google Plus profile page. Um, the live feed and see what you guys are actually saying. It's BYOT. Bring it on top to discuss today. Really, per se, nothing really interesting. All right, loading, 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 loading. I'll put the link right here in the live chat. You can click on the live chat link. Hold on 1 minute. Hold on, give me a minute. You're a theistic evolutionist. Sure, I guess you could say that. Even though it's kind of synonymous with calling somebody a theistic plumber or calling somebody like a theistic biologist or a theistic astrophysicist. Evolution is a fact. I happen to accept evolution, and I'm also a Christian. So I prefer the term evolutionary creationist. Sounds more sophisticated. Awesome. I see you live. Yes, I be live, my brother. I be live. Hey, Ben, what's up? Guess he's having mic problems. See the link in the live chat and you want to come in, click the link and pop on in. Wayne is the sexiest man alive. Yes, so I've heard. Ever since I shaved my head, I heard that bald is better on me. So I guess it's true. The myth is true. Jenner, you know you can come in. The link is in the live chat. Just saying. Just saying. Anybody have any interesting topics? Jenner, you gotta stop sending me hearts, man. I told you, I'm in a committed relationship. Is there a push to talk I need to worry about? I don't think so. Hey Chris, how you doing? Do I know you? Hello, Chris? Hello,
I think I'm getting you.
hello. Yep, I hear you. Hey, how you
All
doing?
right. Doing all right. So I seen that you got live. That was pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I've been going on for the last like what, like about a year. I've been doing these Google Hangouts. So some people usually do like videos, right? And they upload them and they'll have like little like video
Yeah,
snippets or whatever. But it takes too long. It's so tedious. The editing and like the producing, it just takes a lot of my out of my day. So
yeah, I definitely do understand that. All right. So what's the topic today?
I have no idea. Ben, what did you have in mind? Ben,
Oh, basically, I guess we could start off with creationism again and how hilarious it is.
yeah, creationism.
Honest, I think it just
Yeah,
originated with Saint Augustine when I was doing my research, but it never existed before him.
yeah. Creationism is really weird because when I was doing my research into it, so I like you probably know. I don't know how long you've been following my channel for, but I'm an ex younger creationist. So I used to hold to creationism, and then I looked into it and I said, no, it just doesn't make sense. I'm just going to change my mind. Like, God still exists. I still believe in God, but like, I don't think He did it that particular way. It didn't really like crush my faith when I found out. Of course, like younger creationism isn't true. But
Yeah,
I can only find out like from the evidence I've seen. The earliest creationism came about was in about like the 1960s, or maybe even if you want to take it back to like Ellen G. White's days, when in like the 1800s. But other than that, people didn't really hold to like creationism or anything. At
neither
least
did I.
creationism in its current form, that God made the universe and everything in it in 6 24-hour days. That's it's more of an American thing.
Ridiculous if you ask me, because it really puts God in a box. I mean,
Right.
isn't space and time God? But if space and time existed, we have a posing issue right there. I mean, small existence of a God. Only Earth is the universe, and else besides Earth, I guess, according to their brains. But in a grander aspect, of different life, different planets, and a God that's created all of that. Many different universes could be different planes of existence. The issue that I personally have with creationism is that when Christians ground their faith on just that, and once they are disproven, their entire reality is shattered in front of them. It becomes mist. I mean,
That's a good point. I actually talked to somebody whose entire reality was shattered. His name is Paul. He has the YouTube channel Paul the G. You guys can go over there and check out his stuff. Has some really great stuff on science and young Earth creationism. Uh, of course, he doesn't support it. He's debunking it all. But I talked with him about maybe about 3 weeks ago, and it's true. When people find out this stuff isn't true, they make the deduction and they say, "Oh, well, because younger creationism isn't true, or because the universe isn't 6,000 years old, or however old these people think the universe is, therefore God must not exist." And like that's not what the Bible is about. The Bible never claims uh, the universe to be a certain age, and also the days in the Genesis account. Me and my friend General, we talk about this all the time. In ancient Hebrew, would have never looked at those days and would have thought, oh, 24-hour days, 24-hour like periods of time. Only 21st century Western American thinkers come to the Bible and put their interpretation of how they see things into the text. It's rather weird. It's rather strange. But we also had somebody. Well, we got two people new in the room. We got General. I just talked you up too, and we got I can't even pronounce your name. Ouchiwawa. Ouchiwawa.
Sure, yeah.
Wawa.
Hey, gentlemen, can you hear me now?
Okay. Hope I pronounced that right. Hope I didn't like totally botch it.
That's fine.
But yeah, creationism is rather where but I won't say it's worse than creationism, but it definitely does have like ties with younger creationism, intelligent design, and I really don't see like any purpose for intelligent design because it doesn't really tell you anything. Something looks designed, therefore it is designed. Even though like things can have the appearance of design, like a snowflake. A snowflake is not necessarily designed per se, right? A snowflake is something that is just randomly created in nature. And some people would say, well, I think a snowflake was
For Christmas.
intelligently designed by the hand of God. I mean, you could put God in the mix, but it doesn't really tell you anything about the process of precipitation and how snowflakes are made and stuff like that. So
Yeah, pretty much we'll end up getting into the gaps fallacy.
yeah, we don't know, therefore God did it, or whatever. And I don't have a
Yeah.
problem with people like positing anything supernatural into the mix, right? Like I don't care if you think pixies made the universe, but it's like science deals with the how, and like theology deals with like the why and the purpose and the meaning and stuff like that. Um, so I don't see why people just don't let the Bible be the Bible and let the science be the science. It works so much better that way.
It really does, actually, when it comes to that. And to be honest, during my earlier time in Christianity, I pretty much had my faith shattered until history actually brought me back into Christianity. Sadly enough, if it wasn't for Zoharianism and a lot of different religions like Buddhism talking about a Messiah, that there even could have been a Messiah. But just being on the same person, but that's a whole different subject. But
Are you a Christian now?
yes, I'm a full believer. It's called messianic.
Amen. Well, praise God. Praise God. God brought you back. You are a prodigal son.
Oh yeah, let's slip from Christianity and I'm all for Judaism into Christianity, and then season as an atheist, and then I went back into Christianity. But
Hmm. I've never been an atheist, but I will say I can relate to how atheists think in a sense to like I can relate to their skepticism because in the same sense of how atheists are skeptical of God, I was skeptical to the theory of evolution. And so if somebody were to tell me, because I know I hear this argument a lot from like the fundamentalists, they'll say atheists don't really exist, atheists really do believe in God. But no, I now that I think about it, I don't think atheists really do believe in God. I think they really do believe that no God exists. And they were as skeptical as I was about evolution. That's how they felt about God. And so I really truly couldn't see the like evolution being a real thing until I saw um some evidence that I've never seen before. So like for example, I never heard about human chromosome 2 until about last year, and then I started looking into that, and then I started looking into like uh junk DNA, right, stuff like that, vestigial organs, and I started looking into stuff that I haven't seen before. It was just the fact that I was ignorant to certain things. It wasn't the fact that I didn't want evolution to be true. I was open to it. It was just the fact that I had it up until
yeah,
that point. I hadn't seen certain evidences to change my mind, and I think that's how it is with certain atheists. Maybe they really do want to change their mind, but they just haven't seen anything that particularly convinces them yet. And so I think Christians really ought to respect it instead of saying, "Oh, well, you really do believe in God. You just hate him." Because no, I think they really don't believe that there is no God.
the critics of evolution, when I look at our human mind construct, when Adam and Eve first got kicked out of, it was stated that they were wearing plants around them, but then God sacrificed an animal and put on flesh. Ability that story is not only just truly metaphysical, but it also could even standpoint that it never even the metaphysical state of it never even took place on Earth anyway. Whole different reality, whole different place. I mean, we don't really know yet what the context of the garden is quite yet, but we could tell you that it's probably not on Earth because obviously would have found it today, but this Earth discovered.
Let's
But
let's let Benjamin do a mic check real quick. Hold on.
all right.
You guys, I just wanted to see if you could hear me.
Yes.
Yep.
Right on, right on. I didn't want to cut you off mid-sentence. You guys are talking about some interesting stuff.
All right. No, it's all right.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I agree with you guys that there's a limit to the conversation at a certain point when you get these two divides of like even just how to even think about it. I mean,
Pretty much. I mean,
if you can't look at it from the other person's perspective, then you really can't even understand your own argument.
I mean, when it comes to the Torah, we're still struggling what the text means into this day. We got the Mishnah, which was still created at least 200 years after, because the original Mishnah was burned. The issue is first of all, when we're even looking at the tribes of the Torah, there's 7 of them, and we're begging the question why there's 7. Was it really actual genocide, or could have been something different? Kind of the same context. That's what we need history and archaeology to really prove us and really help us with the context. Because without that, we're going to be lost in making assumptions, and basing an entire faith off an assumption is, if you ask me, when it comes to that.
Yeah, I didn't know about that.
You know? No, I just
Oh, yeah.
you can be heard, and Oshiwawa, you guys can be heard. You guys can speak. You're not in G-Man's room. You guys don't have to be quiet.
Also, my first.
Yeah, I see like it.
So Wayne,
Yeah,
you said you just
all the guys in here.
so you just turned into turned away from young Earth creationists like a year ago. Is what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, me, I mostly in high school where I turned away from it. I was pretty advanced in science, and I was kind of going into that, but it was mostly into the Orthodox Judaism type sect before I went into the Marine Corps. Orthodox Jew also believes in the 6-day creationist things. We understand a little bit more when it comes to the Torah, simply because we have some understanding of the Mishnah and the Talmud back then, which I completely reject today right now. We had some understanding of the Talmud and things because there were traditions handed down. But when it came to that, answer provided, you actually start seeing, even if there was a God, that 6-day creationism absolutely absurd. I mean, an aspect of a God, space and time. First of all, how can that being even exist in a day-night type scenario, or even a day-night existing without even Earth being there? Look,
Because the stars showed up before the sun did, and that was one of the things that shocked me as coming out of a fundamentalist Christian family, and then learning about evolution as an adult, was how accurate the Israelites actually had it, as far as how life spawned in the oceans first, and the fact that our pelvis narrowed when we evolved, which is actually what caused women to have pain in childbirth, etc.
Yeah, when we look at it that way, that's actually the more logical aspect of it. I mean, even if you look at the dividing of waters and how space basically divides the Earth's waters from all the other asteroids and other that actually is
I never thought about
water.
that.
But yeah, if we look at space in our own solar system, the water did divide, similar to that, just because of heat and combustion from the sun.
That's a much more sensible formula right there.
Well, yeah, and there are some ways you can like revise the text. You can like revise the creation models and stuff like that, right? But like with younger creationism especially, they don't want to do any revision, and so what they do is all of the new scientific data that we find out and that we get, they just like hand swipe it away, and so they actually never get a chance to do science because they're too busy doing rebuttals to real science. You know, they never do any experiments. All they do is write papers on why everybody else is wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
think their mistake is they see their view as not being an interpretation of the scriptures, and that any other view is a interpretation, and as if we're like adding something to the scriptures that somehow changes what it actually is, which is not what we're doing at all.
I don't see why people just can't like I was saying this for the last couple of days. I don't see why people just don't accept that you can hold to the Genesis account either way. You could take it as historical, of course, like not the young Earth way, or else like Adam and Eve wouldn't even existed. But you can say like it's an old universe, it's an old Earth. Adam and Eve existed, but it wasn't 6,000 years ago. Maybe it was farther back in the past than that. And you could say, yeah, Adam and Eve, they might have been historical figures. Or you could take it the other way. And you can say, I don't think Adam and Eve existed. I think the Genesis story is a meta narrative to just explain how people fell from their relationship with God. So I mean, it could work out both ways, but younger creationists don't want it either way, except for their way, and their way just isn't realistic. And so when people grow up and they go to college, and especially like what was the breaking point for me was when I was studying astronomy, and I'm sitting here looking at how we measure starlight and stuff like that, and relativity, and looking at stars in the distant past, and anybody with just like the slightest knowledge in astronomy, and you understand like how starlight works or whatever, this stuff isn't true. And so you come to like a dilemma where like, do you want to keep on teaching people younger creationism even though you know in your heart it isn't the truth? Or do you want to lie to yourself? I honestly think younger creationist leaders, I think they know this stuff isn't true, but I think it's hard for them to like consciously admit it, because one, like, this is how they get all of their income. Ken Hand, he's made like what, $4 billion off the ark. He's rich off of this.
A lot of people, even Cat Hovind, I mean, he went to prison for lying on taxes and things like that, and he's still making money off of selling things. I mean,
Yeah. They even have statements of faith. I don't know if you've seen it, like on Answers in Genesis, and they'll say that they won't accept anything that's contrary to the scriptures. But I'm hesitant to question all of their honesties. It's possible that they just don't want to have to go through academia, and it's a lot easier to be a young Earth creationist. But some of them could just be starting. I think they could just be that the way they present it is that they're starting with the Bible and interpreting the world through the Bible, where I would say that there needs to be kind of a balance between scriptures and reason.
Well,
yeah.
it's not
I
even,
mean,
they're not even starting with the Bible. They're starting with their interpretation of the Bible. That's why I remember when I first changed my mind about all of this, and people will always give me the same rebuttal. They'd always say, "Oh, you just don't take the Bible literally." I don't like when people say that, because I take the Bible literally. I believe the Bible. I don't believe you, Ken Ham. Um, it's like they make it seem as if their interpretation is the word of God, when it's not. It's only their interpretation, and a better interpretation to go by is the interpretation of the authors, like the ancient or Eastern scholars. We need to look at their interpretation, how they would have read the text, what they would have thought about when they read the Genesis account, and then we'll get a more accurate um interpretation or model of how we're supposed to be reading this ancient text. As a matter of fact, I've noticed that most younger creationists, they don't accept ancient Near Eastern cosmology as being real. Like, they don't think ancient Near Eastern cosmology existed. They don't think that the people who wrote Genesis believed in a flat Earth. So they'll argue against that, but then they'll say, "Oh, isn't it obvious that Moses was a younger creationist?"
Something that I wonder is like, why don't they ever? Surely they notice that this young Earth creationist stuff is turning away people from Christianity. So, because my picture here is of Saint Augustine, and he said that that we should be careful not to make statements about science such that it's so tied to our faith that we can't actually change it. But I wonder why don't they ever think about that? Because I would think that they would at least want to allow for those other interpretations so that more people could come to Christianity.
And that's the thing that people like G-Man and other people are missing out on is this divide that they're creating is basically, I mean, that's not witnessing. When General challenged him on his faith, the first example he gave was street preaching, and I was just like, really? That's your example of your faith? Is street preaching? That's perfect. That is perfect, G-Man.
Wow.
You would have thought he would have went to like the fruits of the spirit in Ephesians. They'll talk about like, yeah, I'm a Christian because I have some of these fruits of the spirit, and it matches my life.
Yeah, you're just not getting.
Yeah.
Young people are too smart. They all have the tools now. They can all search online. They all know that the internet can be filtered properly, and they're all finding out that their parents are lying to them, or just aren't checking for themselves.
I would feel a lot better if parents actually told their kids, you know what, like just because I'm this religion, this doesn't mean that you have to be that religion. But I'll give you the tools so you can test it and you can come to the best conclusion on your own. Like when I have kids one day, I don't think I don't, and people like might disagree with me when I say this. I don't really want to push my religion on my kids. I would rather my kids test it on their own. So that way, like if they do come to the conclusion that Christianity is true, they'll value it so much more.
I think
Real
there,
decision. It was a real choice they made.
yeah, I think there has to be a balance though, because if you think about any other view, like I think we should treat it like any other view, like evolution, for example. I would teach my kids evolution, and I would teach them that it's true, but I would also teach them why it's true, and I think that's something that I would do with Christianity, because I know for myself it took me years to come to the position where I am at now, and it would have been nice to have parents that actually kind of guided me in the right direction.
Well said.
I think with the creationism, it could just be as simple a control mechanism. Or, I mean, it's just the fact that maybe people just don't really want to think outside the box, simply afraid to be proven wrong or simply to be wrong, or it takes the power from. There's so many different things when it comes to the issue as of right now. But here's how I look at it. If we accept as being completely true, as 100% true, as in not, because it is true, but as in literal true, make Revelations true. Why don't we take the seven-headed dragon true? I guess as a snake, and that's what Satan is. He's literally a snake somewhere. And then all the prophecies about Christ, anything that could have been metaphorically things, talk about the Messiah, everything has to be literally true. Christ said anyway. I mean, it was, oh yeah, the Lamb of God. Yeah, I guess he was literally a lamb walking around. Um, but that's the issue when it comes to the literalism, because literalism just type of Phariseeism.
Well, it's not even that the Christians don't take it literally. That the people who aren't younger Christians, right? Like there are like honestly, Genesis was written as a mythos. It was a counter creation myth, like for the people of the day. Um, not saying that it didn't happen, right? But it was a meta narrative. I mean, that's what it was, and so that's how people should take it. You literally take it as a meta narrative. Does that mean that you can't believe Adam and Eve were historical people? Absolutely not. But this whole word literal has like that's more like a trap word people use as they use it in a sense to say um literal meaning that you don't you what's the words I'm looking for? You don't I guess they would say you don't believe in the power of God. There you go. They would say, oh well, why can't God make a universe in 6 days or whatever? I'm not saying God can't. I mean he could, but like why would he? I mean I think it's so much more grand. It's so much more like majestic for him taking his time, and like not having to worry about making all this in 24 hours and all that crap stuff. But the one thing I will say with younger Christians, they're a lot better than the people who believe in the flat Earth stuff.
Oh
Those
man,
people
like
are a whole another crazy.
Yeah, at
have
least
to
we
believe in
can't
one.
see that. Sorry, at least we can't directly see evolution in billions of years, unless you're counting stars.
Well, you know what? I would actually argue we can. Remember Richard Linsky's experiment? He actually he sped up the process of evolution, so we could see the billion-year process happening in just a few generations. So now, like, that's not even an excuse anymore that creationists can use. We can see the process happen in a matter of like 20 years.
well, actually, evolution is actually very quick. I mean, if you even look at the us being North American in America, we're actually more taller than most Europeans. I mean, even the white population here. I mean, we're completely different when it comes to ethnic wise, and ethnicity even changes even throughout centuries. Just 100 years is just enough to create a whole nother race. So evolution does actually take its toll pretty quickly. Yeah, macroevolution.
Especially when you throw in like massive dietary changes, and we're having so much fun changing our physiology now.
Oh yeah.
What do you
No,
guys
we
think about?
definitely.
Have you guys heard about CRISPR-Cas9?
Yeah, one of my lab members used it in one of his experiments.
Yeah, man, it's some pretty amazing stuff. Like we're getting into now because of the fruits of evolution. Um, like none of this stuff would have worked if we didn't know about like the evolution of humanity and stuff. So, and genetics.
Go out. Get out of my room. Get out. Close the door.
We can hear you.
Yeah, just gonna mute you for a
Sorry,
minute.
that was my.
It's cool. Handle that.
That's awesome. Don't worry, I always have the same problem.
Hey guys.
General, I was asking where you were at. I said, were you on the toilet? But
Now I was making some tea.
you're always making tea, man. So sophisticated.
It's
I showed somebody in my
lunchtime.
class a Hugh Ross video. You heard me, Jen?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I showed him hitting treasures in the Book of Job when he well he made the prediction that we should find fossils on the moon. I'm still not even really like clear on like where that prediction came from, but I'm just like, all right, like whatever. You're Hugh Ross.
Yeah, actually but it is a brilliant prediction because the moon formation event occurred very, and Hugh is reading Genesis 1-2 in that regard, because if this was, then you have very, very, very early, biotic life in the early oceans, and you have late heavy bombardment period take place soon after that. The material that the organic material on the Earth's surface will be transported to the moon. So that means the fossils on the moon would date back to pretty much the biotic life that first started. So Hugh's making a prediction that if life on the moon, if the fossils on the moon appear very advanced, proves that all in the origin of life scenario, in biogenesis, that
I think
I don't
RTB's
know if
model
it
would
was my
be
voice
way
cutting out.
more.
I don't know if I,
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, you were cutting me out a little bit, but I was just saying. I think their model like. What you say? I thought he was speaking. I think their model would be way better if they did include evolution in it. Like if they just start like fighting against evolutionary theory, they'd be great. But I think because RTB has been doing this for such a long time, and like that, don't they have like sponsors or something like that? 'Cause I know people can donate to them. Like they would lose like a lot of their fan base, and they had to start all over again. So like even in RTB cases, in RTB's case, um, it is kind of like a monetary issue along with the younger creationists in a sense. Because younger creationists, if Ken Ham stepped out today and said that he didn't believe in younger creationism anymore, he would lose the Creation Museum. Um,
And a lot of people's
so
lives would be ruined.
yes,
They would oust him.
See, this is the
There's
thing.
a lot of people with strange beliefs. I mean, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, they
Oh, no,
probably
I'm
just
just
burned
saying.
down the Creation Museum or something. But
Yeah, he's in a bind in a lot of ways. Everyone who's involved in any aspect of it seems to me to be in a bind. My parents even are heavily involved with the church, and they've got themselves just doing something every night, and that's all they can talk about is how stressed out they are about it, and they can't. So many people are depending on them. It's got to be a lot worse for people that are actually, you know, doing this in a corporate sense.
hmm. But
Well,
you would
yeah,
think
it's
though,
a
like
way to raise money.
right?
Okay, how's
Yeah.
how's my microphone now? Is it good?
Oh, that's way better. That's way better.
Okay,
Speak about people who are.
I'll
What'd you say?
repeat what I was saying earlier. Did you want me to do that?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the fossils on the moon. So Hugh, the prediction is actually pretty good. It's a pretty a very interesting idea, and it. So Hugh's model, he's a concordist, and he says that Genesis 1:2 is the first account of the creation of life, and young Earth creationists will say, oh no, but hang on a second, first life forms would be the plants in day 3. But Hugh makes a powerful point, and it fits with the interpretation as well, that in day 1 you have life appearing in the oceans, and that life transforms the atmosphere, and hence let there be light. Now, that life would have been 3.8 billion years ago, roughly, and the moon formation event was relatively close to that era as well, closer to the Earth. And the Earth would have been spinning a lot faster as well. So then you have this late heavy bombardment period where the organic material on the Earth's surface will be transported to the moon. So Hugh's point is that according to Genesis 1:2, you have a divine intervention creating life. So it's not naturalistic, it's a divine intervention. And therefore, if it is a divine intervention, he's expecting life to be complex at the start. Obviously, the naturalist will also very simple, and then it becomes complex over time. But he's saying, no, it'll be complex at the start, and then if you want to include the evolutionary story, then you have an evolution of life. So he's saying, if we go to the moon and we analyze the fossils on the moon, we'll see who gets it right. If it's really complex in nature, for it can't be explained naturalistically, kind of like irreducible complexity, that sort of argument. Then it's another piece of evidence that it can't be natural. It kind of originated naturally.
I don't know if I agree with that. I wouldn't say that's so much of an argument for the existence of God as much as it is an argument to disprove evolution.
Sorry, Wayne, what did you say?
I don't see that as much of an argument for the existence of God as much as it is an argument to disprove evolution. Because I mean, even if we find fossils on the moon, right, and they're not complex and they're very simple, right? Well, I mean, that's what you would expect if evolution is true. But if we go to the moon and we find this fossil
No,
that's
no, no, no.
irreducibly
If it's
complex,
no. If it's simple, so evolution is actually not at all connected to the original life context. So the original life is all about this issue of was it purely natural, or was there some form of quote unquote miracle? And if it's complex at the start, obviously we hold to evolution. But if the origin of life is complex at the start, then explain to me, naturalist, how the heck did this complex thing just pop into existence?
I don't know. I think
Confused,
I
maybe.
think I
Yeah.
think we actually would expect to see something very simple and not complex at all. But it doesn't mean God didn't do it. Like the universe started off very, very like innocent, simple, right? The universe started off really, really small, no bigger than the size of a period, and then it expanded onward from then.
Yeah, no, but it it depends on how you see. I mean, the early singularity during the Planck era, uh, it is pretty complex, like the forces, the unification theory, and there's a lot of fine-tuning parameters that uses as arguments to say, look, even the Big Bang itself is fine-tuned a ridiculous amount. If we find the same thing with respect to life, all he's doing is he's appealing to and what good. So yeah.
It's interesting. I guess
But
like the
Wayne,
only way we need.
basically, Wayne, just quickly, Wayne, sorry.
Mhm.
Um, it proves Hugh's point. If it is simple, I would also sort of agree with you that, yeah, God can obviously start small and work with that. But let's just be honest, it would and awesome if the fossils were indeed quite complex in nature. Be a smoking gun, really.
So, are you trying to say that it would be too early for it to have evolved naturally, or are you just saying that it would just happen to fit with your model?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So why couldn't
it
they?
would be? I mean, yeah, it's a Hadean. It just doesn't allow for such a appearance of a complex organism. The you have the prokaryotes. So even before that, the biotic life, if it's complex enough, pretty powerful argument.
Why couldn't they just say
the
that?
origin of life, people will.
Why couldn't they say that it happened?
Sorry?
Why couldn't they say that it happened earlier? Like that life arose earlier, or that evolution happened quicker?
Actually, okay. So if it happens earlier, it's actually worse because of the conditions of the planet. And interestingly, so the Genesis text literally, like if we take that interpretation, it's literally saying, so the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, 2 billion, but it's still really hostile. Expecting life until maybe 3.2 was the initial figure, 3.2 billion years. Then now they push it back to 3.8. Now, as of like last year or the year before, they had to push it back to 4.1, and that is like, whoa, like how, like life, like isotopic evidence showing that life started really early and in hostile conditions, which lo and behold is matching Genesis, because Genesis is placing life's origin right at the start, in a hostile environment as well, because both in the Hebrew text. So
turns out it's a really vibrant universe, possibly.
Well,
so
I think even
conditions.
Sorry, Chris.
Well, I think if we even seen fossils
they try and
was that?
Go ahead.
Even if we did find fossils on the moon of complex life as multicellular organisms and things like that, it still wouldn't even necessarily prove there was even life on Earth. It could have been from somewhere else, crashed spaceship, a different type of life somewhere else. It would just be actually considered as a kind of like a freak event.
Also, with how the moon could have been formed, right? I mean, there could have been something residual there, or something picked up in rocks during the formation of the moon. I don't know. I do like the idea that there's probably multiple arguments for it.
The issue is sorry. The issue is when we try to look for something supernatural or unnatural. The thing of it is, if it exists in a reality, it's considered natural. The entire notion of God, he does exist, so he's actually just natural, and everything that he would do just be a natural force some way or another. Even if it was a spontaneous miracle, I mean, the whole implications of our entire reality is everything would be explainable.
Well, that would be Christian naturalism, which is what I hold to. I think that even miracles can be explained one day by science. We don't know how, people can come back from the dead right now, but maybe in the future, we might be able to figure out a natural cause of resurrection. Prove God says if you define God, because here's the thing, I do not think that philosophical naturalism has to necessarily imply atheism. Rather, I think that God could exist beyond the universe, but yet still be natural. He'd still be eternal. He'd still be all powerful and all knowing. The only difference is that he, wouldn't be magic. He would just use natural laws. And I don't see a problem with that. So, I mean, you don't really need to necessarily say that a miracle has to be an unexplained scientific event. I think it can be explained by science. So, I mean, that's the whole thing with it.
Well, yeah,
I completely agree. I agree with Kyle, and in fact, I'm just wondering, Kyle, do you write a blog?
I think you're gonna have to repeat that. You were cutting out.
Am I coming through?
Yeah. Well, so much for that.
I heard him ask Kyle if he writes a blog. That's about all I heard.
Yeah. So, Kyle, why do you think that God would do that? Like, why do you think God would stay within the realms of nature when he could, do something supernatural?
Well, I mean, it's hard to define supernatural. I mean, if we're talking about magic, then, I mean, I know our society thinks that's magic, therefore it doesn't exist, and therefore anything that has to do with the supernatural is therefore can't be explained. But, I mean, I think that God would be within the natural realm, but he would be the only eternal thing in the natural realm, meaning that God would necessarily be nature itself. Now, I'm not implying pantheism or anything like that, because God is not the universe, and the universe is not God. God would still be separate from the universe, but yet at the same time, he could still be a part of the natural order, so to say.
So would this be kind of like occasionalism? Because, people often say that, well, what I think is that things have secondary causes. But it sounds like what you're saying is that things would be directly caused by God to act how they act.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. There's two different causations. There's agent causation and then event causation. Event causation is the laws of nature and how things have cause and effect. Agent causation is where God can go into the system and fix it so that he can make a miracle or something like that. So technically, it could naturalism would still work under agent causation, because then God himself would act within the physical, within the natural realm, and do miracles and stuff. And so I don't necessarily see an issue with philosophical naturalism being true and Christianity being true at the same time. I do not think that they conflict. So that's just what I think.
Well, it's kind of like a computer designer. If let's say we created a reality inside of a computer and we decided to just some reason write in a tank falling from a sky in that reality, well then that aspect of that tank falling from the sky, let's say if it was Grand Theft Auto and everyone was alive in Grand Theft Auto or somehow in that type of AI, then that literally will start becoming natural. So it would be able to still be explained even in that that simulation itself of how it exists.
Well, that's what I hold to. I'm a Christian idealist, meaning that I think that God's mind simulates our universe, that we literally live in the matrix. Now, I'm not saying we live in a computer. What I'm saying is that instead of us living and being simulated in a computer, rather we're being simulated in the mind of God. And I think when you look at the early church fathers and what they taught about what God was, if you actually look, they taught a Palamite panentheistic God, which is a God where he's not part of the universe, but he sustains it, but yet he's still greater than the universe itself. And if you look up, there's a YouTube video made by Inspiring Philosophy called Christianity and Panentheism, and he explains very well how this viewpoint of Palamite panentheism is actually taught in Scripture. It's actually compatible with Scripture. It's literally taught in the Bible. So I think that if we look at things, then I think the idea of us living in a simulation is very plausible, and I
Yeah,
actually
it's
believe
very
it to be
real.
true.
I agree. Although I don't know if you can actually read it into the scriptures. Like I'm more of an accommodationist. Like general, you're more like a concordist. I'm more like an accommodationist. Like the models and stuff that General and I make, like they could work, but at the same time, I don't think there's any like new scientific revelation in the Bible. I don't think because I don't think the people would have been able to understand it. Um, you know.
I
But
think that
I don't have a problem with the universe being a simulation at all. Because it goes to show like if we can go and we can make a simulation, right? And we
Yeah,
rewind the
exactly.
process and come to find out we're in a simulation, well then common sense tells us, just for the fact that we can recreate the simulation that we're in, um we're literally reconstructing how the simulation was made in the first place. So we're recreating the creation when we make laptops and computers and stuff like that. We're
Exactly.
literally showing each other how it was done without even knowing it. What's the saying? The universe it has a universal language, and the language of the universe is numbers. And come to find out, we can make our own computerized simulated realities with ones and zeros. So it could be that we are in the same way how we use ones and zeros to create our own simulations. God uses numbers and etc. To make this reality as well.
Yeah.
Exactly. Just the only difference would be we're in God's mind rather than a computer. But I get your point.
So I kind of hold to a similar view, but my only issue is that so I think I think that existence is more fundamental than ideas. Idealism kind of makes the mind the most fundamental thing. But I think that before that we have existence, because you have to presuppose that something exists in order for it to have a mind. Um, but I do believe that I do agree with you that everything is produced by the mind of God. I would just say that the mind of God is greater than it's something more fundamental than our mind.
Well,
Something
yeah, it
greater.
would be, because God is eternal. We're not eternal. Our minds are not eternal, but God's mind is eternal. So then our minds would be somewhat dependent on God. So
Yeah.
our mind is not fundamental, but his God, his mind is fundamental. He is like, if you look at solipsism, for example, teaches that only your mind exists. Well, then God, before he created the universe, he would be a solipsist. Even if, so I think it's totally compatible with what we view of, physics and stuff. So
I kind of always felt that one of Christ's messages to us with the Holy Spirit was about the idea that, and one of the ways I've always felt with him living in me is that he's experiencing it with me in a way.
exactly, God would essentially be experiencing what we experience. So again, that pretty much proves my point that um, we God would experience what we experience. So.
It certainly creates an easy ethic all of a sudden when you are like when you're literally riding shotgun, with the reason that you exist.
Well, yeah, that's actually a whole meaning of. You ever heard of the phrase nefesh, the breath of God? Basically, that's being in every animal and every life form. And then when you're saved, you receive the Ruach Kadesh, which is the Holy Spirit. Yeah, it's a Hebrew word. And basically, what the nefesh is, it's also an aspect of God, but it's more of an observance aspect, basically, of kind of like peeking through a window. But when you see the Ruach Kadesh, that's when he lives inside of you too as well. So you living inside of God at the same time you're in God too as well. I mean, well, God's living in you as well. You're living in Him. So it gets into this whole confusing thing. But I believe the best way to actually really understand it is just to understand that He's just in a higher dimension than we are, a point outside of time and space, even at a point outside of this universe.
Well,
So
yeah, I get your point.
is General? Are you there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering, is my mic clear now?
Yeah,
Yep,
it
I
works
can hear
good.
you.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you a question along the lines of like the cosmological argument and stuff. I don't know if you accept any of them, but I know that William Lane Craig and such has been trying to argue that there could some way around relativity, and since you're into physics, I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
That he's wrong. You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
in my head.
I'm not saying he hasn't thought about this hard and all that, but
Wait, is
B theory of time. Time actually fits very well with how I've been thinking about God and how he relates to time. Statements in the Bible that you have length contraction of time. One day is like 1,000 years, that sort of thing. I take the ancient church's view of Sadic union that did not actually exist for the first time in Jesus. It's interesting when you survey the hypostatic union, and this is a good argument against Muslims. And by the way, this is important. I just want to make sure my mic is clear. Am I breaking up?
You're fine.
Okay, all right. So I asked Muslims this question. I asked them, since you don't believe the incarnation is possible, that you say, Allah can't condescend himself into the creation. Well, if Allah is so far removed, how does he communicate to his angel? Because his angel takes his message and then transfers it to us. But the angel is as much a created being as you and me. So in some sense, Allah has to condescend himself, cause have a hypostatic union with the creation, in order for even the angel to understand who he is. And so that then leads into the idea of kenosis and so on. So, the universe does operate under B theory time, but God obviously is outside the universe. Therefore, you can't actually make the proposition about A theory of time or B theory of time with respect to God. But because God in with the universe, I do believe God plays dice. So, but at the same time, so what does the dice analogy mean? Well, true randomness. So I do believe that true randomness time is the case of the universe, and if he plays with dice, that's tantamount to the fact that he truly is omniscient. Because if there is true randomness and he knows all things, therefore he truly is omniscient. So William Lane Craig hasn't thought about this because, interestingly, B theory of time didn't exist at the time of Leibniz. And yet, when you look at the best of all possible worlds, Leibniz was on the right track. And this is an argumentation that even he made. That would be my response to that.
It's kind of like my Christmas post I made when I had said God used time and chance to save the universe.
But I mean, I've heard that that the B theory of time is not necessary. Like, I was reading a book by Karl Popper, for example. It's saying that there are other ways of interpreting that. Is that true? I mean, sure, you could, maybe you accept the B theory of time, but it seems like it would be possible to hold to an A theory of time, at least logically, right? Or is that, I'm really interested in your opinions, that you're more informed on this stuff than
Yeah.
anyone.
No. Again, all I'm appealing to is the fact that this is the way the universe functions. Riddles that need ironing out. I'm not denying that. And since William Lane Craig is a philosopher, obviously I expect that. So he tries to update Einstein's model through philosophy, but again, hence you have to deal with empirical data. The math. So the point is this: the math works. I mean, the GPS satellite systems run on B theory of time. They don't run on A theory of time. Recent movie Interstellar gave an extreme sort of like ethical context as to the ramifications of extreme notions of B theory of time, that, time dilation and how that can affect things and all that. And therefore, how does God fit into that? Well, again, the universe is 10 dimensions, and yet simultaneously he's in hypostatic union with the universe. Then I'm expecting time to. So for us, you and me, time is one dimension, 2 plus dimensions, 2, 3, 4 dimensions. And once you get into the third dimension with respect to time, you're dealing with basically like a form of non-Euclidean, fits very comfortably with B theory of time, with length contraction and so on. And also to accommodate the free will of humans and so on. I think people like Karl Popper were, I hate to say this because these guys are pretty smart. Like they think things through and so on. But as far as the evidence goes, like, empirical data goes, they needed to look into it a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, the common criticism that I've heard is that, that this is based on logical positivism, and that that you could be looking at just one part of nature and not the full thing by, you know, sort of abstracting this mathematical system, that it doesn't kind of fully realize what's actually going on there. But I mean, if you're, I can understand wanting to just go based upon what the evidence is, but I think the philosophers are trying to also work in some kind of metaphysics as well.
Yeah.
Well, this is a crime scene not of our making, so that makes it really, really difficult. It would be
A really cool set of books. Yeah, a really cool set of books you should get, you know, is by a guy named Thomas Torrance. He's a Scottish theologian. He's passed away now, but he wrote a trilogy. One of the first, Space, Time, and Incarnation, where he's purely a theologian. He's Reformed as well. So it's rare to find a Reformed theologian that delves into cutting edge science and so on. Not only did he showcase or survey the scientific method as originating from the Christian Church, especially from the Renaissance onward, but he also studies what you would like to call the metaphysical context, but you know, utilizing actual physics and then theology and how that works and so on. And hence the photo that I have on my Google Plus, the Tesseract cross, and how that works with respect to B theory and the atonement and all that. I'll post the side link in the side chat to his works.
General, you see my question to the side?
If you time traveled into the past, you get cancer. You can't time travel into the past.
No, but if you could, you would though, right?
You mean
I'm,
to the early history of the planet?
well, no, I'm talking about like if you had like you know, people make like time travel machines and stuff like that. Like say I made like a time travel machine, and I could travel back to like 1776. I'll probably get cancer, right? There's always some weird ramifications like that.
Well,
Yeah,
when it comes
yeah,
to time
I don't
travel,
know.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's
the
this theory
issue
that
is
says that if
that
you meet
all of our
yourself in the
particles in the
past, then the whole universe is going to blow up or something. I don't know.
I was under the impression that you could only time travel forwards by increasing your rate of speed.
Right.
Well, the issue is that every single the what you call quarks, basically, that makes up the protons, neutrons, electrons, things like that, we all have the same spin going forward in time, believing that the spin actually causes, when it comes to sporadic matter, is what causes us to jump forward in time. To try to go reverse in time, you'd be destroying that spin, so that entire molecular structure of yourself would just dissipate. You'd just be something else. You just wouldn't exist after that.
That's pretty nutty.
But
Wait,
I love it.
I was just gonna say, just to like kind of give you an idea of one of the kind of metaphysical ideas that they've given, and just to kind of see what your opinion on this is, that some people have suggested that there's sort of a ontological time and then also a metric time. And so the ontological time would be measurement with respect to before and after. And then, so the metric time would be actually our measurement of it. So in order to measure it, we have to have something like a clock. So we have to compare two things that are moving and see what the two rates are. But ontologically, we're just talking about whether or not something has moved from before and after. So that's kind of and that's kind of what I've seen out there in the literature.
If you link me to some of the stuff you've been looking into, I'll take a look at it.
Well, there's the other aspect of time when basically Matthew saw Moses and Elijah basically all meeting Jesus. Then you read in the old text that Moses actually did go on top of a mountain, and then Elijah did disappear for a time. So,
Right, right. So you do have
so
like time travel in the Bible and relativity and stuff. It's weird, right?
yeah, which is kind of strange because I'm not sure if Ezekiel or Moses actually seen Matthew, but they were there with Jesus, so they were going forward in time, but yet they were still in their own time, somehow
Right.
existing in both. It's kind of strange.
That's the answer I gave somebody. They asked because they were looking for like the spiritual answer, and they're like, "Why was Moses and Elisha with Jesus?" And I'm like, "It's obvious. They time travel."
Oh yeah, but I think it's even stranger than that because it almost seems like that entire case. It's like their timelines. That time itself was all connected. Like somehow, like that space, that type of time was in all 3 points at the same time. It gets really confusing when it comes to when you're talking to someone about linear time, but I don't think personally that time is linear.
Well, I mean, if you look at general relativity, it's not linear. Time is relative to one's perspective, and it's relative to how gravity works and stuff. So
Yeah, but like, correct me if I'm wrong, General, but isn't that basically just based upon differences in light speed particles moving with inside of an atom? So like basically it kind of has from one perspective, it has a longer path to move. If you think of like the photon clock, for example, if from a perspective where you're stationary and something else is moving close to the speed of light, the photon would have a longer path to move, whereas and that would be kind of like the same thing inside of an atom, except for with like subatomic particles that are intrinsically move at the speed of light. Is that kind of correct?
Yeah, but then at the same time, I'm thinking about well, are you talking about the movement within the fabric of space-time of a particular piece of matter, like either your body or even down to
Yeah,
the atomic scale? Yeah.
right. So I'm like, this is what I'm been kind of thinking about. Like, um, it seems like when we're talking about time slowing down, we're talking about this sort of metric time. We're talking about
Yes. Yeah.
we're talking about the amount of how fast it kind of moves. Everything moves inside of atoms relative to something else, sort of.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And the Lorentz time dilation factor, interestingly, has been used to. Um, this is like late 90s or early 2000. They did an experiment on rats where copper and vanadium are the essential elements for the immune system, and um, if the speed of light was variable, so speed of light needs to be a constant value, and so if the speed of light was variable, then you wouldn't have a nervous system, biologically speaking. So they were arguing, okay, then let's take that into account with space travel and what actually happens to you if, say, if you're going 50% the speed of C. But again, there is no special frame of reference, even with respect to every particle as well. So in a spaceship that's going 50% C, yes, time is slow for me, but for me, like in the ship, if I'm unaware that I'm moving at that speed, it's like everyday life to me. And whereas the other surroundings are having a different rate of clock rate. But now that involves the paradoxes. That then falls back to the whole what Karl Popper was trying to get at. And so here you have the empirical data, and then we have to try and understand that philosophically.
Hey, General, I have a question for you. If I was trying to explain special and general relativity to my little sister, what's the best way for me to do it in about 3 minutes?
John Wheeler said it perfectly. He said, space-time tells matter how to move, and matter tells space-time how to curve. That's general relativity in a nutshell.
They were talking
So
about
the
that
fact-
yesterday in Steve Shannon. And
Yeah.
they bring in the guy, Mr. Intelligent Design. That guy, he's really pleasant, man. He's a really nice guy. But they were arguing about whether gravity pulls or whether gravity. Did you see it?
Just quickly, I don't know if I answered Okchiwawa's question properly, so maybe you can.
Oh yeah, that's fine. So, I did wonder though. What about like the speed of light as a sort of absolute frame of reference, since it's constant in all frames?
Wait, sorry, say that again.
I said, what about like the speed of light as sort of a absolute frame of reference? Like say you were on a photon, for example.
Yeah. That's connected to the whole notion of it being massless. So when you look at the Lorentz equations, if you are traveling at the speed of light, if you have mass, then so E equals mc squared is actually divided by the square root of 1 minus, and then the division of v squared over c squared. Squared part would be the u, that you're the object moving relative to c. If you match c, then you basically have now divided by 0, because 1 minus 1 is 0, and the denominator is 0 now.
Sure.
So
I mean, it's impossible for us to even get close to the speed of light anyway. But I'm just talking about like theoretically speaking.
So the frame of reference then with respect to the light, it's like as if light is the reference point, even though and then that's important because it's massless. Now, recently there was that hoopla over the neutrino that may have been going at the speed of light or even faster than the speed of light. And that's a problem because the neutrino does indeed have mass. And therefore that then affects the frame of reference issue. So, but they then realized that their instruments were actually measuring it wrong. And so it actually worked out. So relativity was okay. Obviously, that neutrino that was going like 97% speed of light or something like that, that's fine. So yeah, I'll just be right back, guys. 1 sec. I just got family members at home.
Man, our universe is just so exciting. I think it's just when we start learning more about the aspect of time and space and possibilities of different things, and just I think that's what really excites me, because maybe that's what Christ meant to when he said seek and then you'll find. He actually literally meant seek I mean, seek for the answers, seek for things that you don't yet know, so you can find the answers, so you can find explanation to certain things, and pretty much science when it comes to that.
Yep, including miracles too.
But I think when it comes to when people start teaching when 6-day creationism or such absolutism when it comes to that, basically it does hinder our mission work. It does hinder knowledge. It does hinder when it comes to helping your fellow man around your community, because then you're just able to kind of just say that you know everything and they don't. I think that's what the whole implication of it is.
Oh yeah, I mean, I kind of wonder when Jesus comes back. I don't know when he wrote it. What, like, when the new heaven and earth will come, when God tells creationists that evolution is true. I kind of wonder what their response is going to be to
Oh
that.
my goodness. There's a guy at my school, he's a younger creationist. And he knows my position. And we were basically on break. And he's like, Wayne, I can't wait to get to heaven so Jesus can tell you you were wrong. And I just smirked and I left. Because he can't handle the truth.
I kind of, I mean, I can't, I mean, that's going to, I just want to see what their faces are going to be once God tells them, like, hey, evolution is true. Like, ugh, that's,
You know, they probably wouldn't even believe that was God. They probably would think it's like a demon or something like that.
Man,
I don't know.
you were a monkey. You were a monkey the whole time.
That's how God the
That's
dog
what I
starts. Right there.
I picture just getting debased immediately, but like in such a jovial, just relieving way.
But yeah, actually, once we are resurrected in the first resurrection, during the 1,000 years, that's actually when Gog and Magog actually happens. They don't exist today except during that time, and those are the people that are actually resurrected. So there's people after that that does rebel against God,
Right. And then like there's
according to
like
Revelation.
another war and stuff like that. I'm actually about to go off here, guys. You guys can still talk about it. I gotta get ready to go to bed. I got school in a couple hours, but this was a really good conversation, guys.